Hi, my name is Megha Pillai, and this is my presentation on the accuracy of news and media covering scientific topics. I will be comparing the news article by the New York Times titled Like Cheetahs, Ancient Ocean Creatures May Have Moved with the Gallop, and the primary literature article they cited titled The Evolution of Asymmetrical Gaits in Gnathostomes and Vertebrates. Both articles cover the Bio 182 concepts of evolution and natural selection. To start off, the New York Times article provides a general and brief summary of the primary article. The article first touches on asymmetrical and symmetrical gaits. An asymmetrical gait is where the front limbs and the back limbs move in pairs, while a symmetrical gait is where the right limbs move together and the left limbs move together. The news article continues to explain how the salamander was the model for how the first terrestrial animals moved, especially the fact that these first terrestrials must have had asymmetrical gait. However, recently there have been new research pointing at the fact that these ancient gnathostomes may have had an asymmetrical gait as well. Finally, the New York Times article discusses the primary literature article's final findings, and they determined that the task at hand is a very difficult task as it will take a lot of guesswork as they're trying to determine the locomotion of a 400 million year old species. Their data still had predominantly mammals in it, so there is some work that needs to be done to make their model a lot more accurate. They explained that there was only a 75% likelihood that the ancestors had an asymmetrical gait and that it could have been gained and lost as time went on. Now moving on to the findings of the primary literature articles. They touch on the various forms of asymmetrical and symmetrical gaits to set up for the rest of their findings and explain their criteria, such as gallops. So to create their phylogenetic tree, the researchers created evolutionary scenarios for their findings. They made 4 different models, one of them being that gains and losses of the asymmetric gait happened at varying rates called ARD. The second one being gains and losses of asymmetrical gaits happened at equal rates called the equal model. The third one being that asymmetrical gaits did not occur at the root or the ancestor and was gained later and never lost called the gain model. While the fourth one being that asymmetrical gaits happened at the root, the ancestor, and then was lost and was never regained called the loss model. They then put the phylogenetic tree into 4 different models mentioned before with methods of maximum likelihood and Bayesian inference using Markov chain Monte Carlo. Here is an example of what they created with an ARD model. This shows the best fit evolutionary model, and blue shows that the species does not have an asymmetric gait, while red shows that there is an asymmetric gait. Each node is labeled as a different clade as shown in the outer ring. After the analysis, they discovered that the maximum likelihood analysis favored the ARD evolutionary model. The rate at which the asymmetrical gaits were lost was 3 times higher than the rate at which they were gained. The Markov chain Monte Carlo analysis showed equal support for the ARD, loss, and equal models. However, both models clearly rank the gain model as the least likely to happen. Through their research, they overall concluded that the ancestors of gnathostomes most likely had an asymmetrical gait. They believed that it might have been unexpressed in some ancient species, but it was present in their neural circuitry. After their reconstruction of the clades, there is a clear showing that the asymmetrical gaits are both evolved in and out. The researchers also looked further into the anatomy of species with symmetrical gaits, and many have bones that make it impossible to move asymmetrically. So how was the news article accurate or inaccurate? In terms of accuracy, the New York Times did a great job on giving a summary on the researchers' findings. However, it was a very brief summary. The news article was accurate in its ability to explain the 2 different forms of gait, the general points of research that they did, if they found out if ancient sea organisms had an asymmetrical gait, and how close they are to figuring it out. There were no real inaccuracies except for the fact that the article stated that there was a 75% chance that the ancestral sea creatures had asymmetrical gaits, which was seen nowhere in the primary literature article. However, they missed out on many important points on their findings, like the specific kinds of each form, as that explains their limitations in the final results. They did not explain the model that the researchers ended up going with, ARD, which would explain more on where this asymmetrical gait came from, and the possible ways that these species may or may not have had an asymmetrical gait, such as their anatomy as explained in the primary literature article. So why was the news article accurate or inaccurate? The news article was the way that it was, probably to appeal to an audience with limited scientific knowledge. They provided an interesting title about how ancient ocean creatures may have moved similar to cheetahs to grab the attention of a reader, as cheetahs were barely even mentioned in the primary article. I believe this was the New York Times way of explaining Gates to an audience who may have never heard of it before. The New York Times articles are also short, so they must have been limited on their specific details. The New York Times, however, did not sensationalize this news as it really appeals to a very niche audience. New York Times is known to be a very credible source, and all the points that they did have were very specific to the article and matched accurately, even if they did not have all the details. Overall, in this case, New York Times was able to accurately convey new scientific findings. For listening, credits go to SlidesGo, Flaticon, FreePic, and Creezilla. I'm credited for speaking and creating this slideshow, and this is made within the context of Bio 182 General Biology for Majors 2, Arizona State University, Spring 2022. Here are the references for the article, and these are all the figures and images used in this PowerPoint. Thanks again.